Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to leave this here. Hey, everybody, it's wonderful to be here at the MMA Impact Forum, chatting to all of you about the future of marketing. The way we're going to run this is we're going to have the 3 Ps, 2 presentations and a panel. So I'm going to do a presentation, really high-level overview with a specific focus on digital identity. Dawood is going to do a presentation on how to approach the integration of emerging tech into your organization. And then we're going to call up Munya, Kerry, and Denvor, who are going to join our panel to talk about this really, really interesting topic. So with no further ado, let me kick off. And excuse me for turning like this, but I'm too short to see over the podium at the... Just saying. Okay, maybe I'll do this. There we go. Is this all right? Cool, now I can see my slides. Okay, so we can't start a conversation about the integration of technology into the marketing arsenal without talking about digital adoption. And I'm sure you're all aware of this, this annual study that comes out by Meltwater at just the sheer dramatic pace of growth of adoption. So 8 billion people in the world, 8.46, so 105%. Of those have mobile connections, cellular phones, 5.16 billion internet users, and we've just never seen that curve drop off. And finally, 4.76 billion social media users. That is the world we're living in. If anybody argues with you about digital being the channel, then you just pull up the slide and you say, excuse me, but here it is. So let's look at South Africa. We have 43.48 million internet users, which is a 72% penetration, 25.8 million social media users, which is 42% penetration, and 112.7 million active mobile connections. So if you look at those little arrows that I added in there, we are higher than the global average in terms of internet user penetration. We are slightly lower than the global average in terms of social media users, but we have we've knocked it out of the park when it comes to mobile use. So we are absolutely 100% a mobile market in this continent and in this country. So what are we going to talk about, and what are the issues that marketers have to become acquainted with and comfortable with as they consider how to leverage technology to become more innovative and to become more effective? The first thing that we have to realize is that data-driven decision-making is really reshaping everything that we do. We have access to a tsunami worth of data that is hitting our servers and available to us every day. We finally have access, and it's becoming just more and more accessible, to tools that allow us to analyze that data in terms of really understanding customer behavior, customer preferences, and trends that we're seeing in terms of those behaviors and preferences in an incredibly precise way. I mean, and that has taken time, but we really do have that at our fingertips now. So what does that let us do? It lets us make decisions based on deep insight. It lets us deliver more relevant messaging, either through the content we put out there or the advertising we put out there to drive a conversion. And it helps us to fine-tune the way we do marketing in near real time. I mean, we literally have superpowers at our disposal, but it also puts a lot of responsibility on our shoulders, us and the businesses we work for, in that it means that we have to think about the ethics and the responsibility that we have to actually use data efficiently, effectively, but also without abusing this position of power that we have. The other thing that has absolutely emerged on every single marketer's sort of windscreen is AI-driven insights, and this is all related. AI has revolutionized the way we can process and understand and make decisions around this massive amount of data that is hitting us. It can uncover those hidden trends. It can predict customer behaviors. It can automate our decision-making processes and our execution activities. And it does empower us to drive better ROI or better return on our marketing investment. And that really, again, gives us an enhancement to our superpower. But if we look at it from the customer's perspective, all they want is that we recognize them, we understand them, and we deliver to them the value that they're looking for from us. So what does that mean? It allows us, the technology that we use allows us to map customer journeys, understand customer touch points and their pain points a lot better, deliver more consistent, personalized communication that is tailored to each and every customer with a real chance to deepen loyalty and generate long-term value. And then we're going to talk to our panel about all of the different channels that have come to market that we can use in order to transform our businesses. But I'm going to take a step back, and I'm going to talk about something that's very, very important to all of us when it comes to data. And it's all very well saying, you know, AI is the next big sexy tool that we're going to have some fun with, we're going to learn more about customers, we're going to be able to be more efficient, deliver a better return. But if you don't have a data strategy, you can't have an AI strategy. That really is a case of going back to first principle and connecting. So let's think about digital identity as a core element of our data strategy, because technology has evolved there. It's not the sexy technology, it's not the cool stuff, but there's a real interesting move in technology in terms of how you remember or how you're able to prove who you are, prove who you say you are in the digital world, consistently without constantly putting your own personal data at risk. So remember the old days when we had to prove our identity? We had to pull out that little green book and still have to do that when we travel internationally, but that's besides the point. And, you know, there was a whole lot of initiatives in the early days about, okay, we're going to digitalize our organizations and our systems and our processes and our workflows, and it didn't really help. It didn't really work. Companies just sat with silos of data that they weren't doing anything with and weren't able to execute on. And then kind of that evolved into this world of specifically the banks, but the mobile, the telcos, all big companies who deal with a lot of customer data, of trying to get it all centralized into a data lake where you could have a sort of a central or single version of the truth. Not. If anybody tried to go into a bank who you had an existing current account with and try and get a bond or try and get a car. Yeah, you remember the 74,000 forms that you have to fill in every single time. Okay, that was the past. Then we look at digital identity. And digital identity has taken multiple forms over the years. And I'm going to talk a little bit more to this because this is where this space is evolving. There was the old days where you had to create a username and password for every single website you went to, and then you have to have an app to remember all the usernames and passwords that you created for every single one. And then you had to change your username and password, or your password at least every time. And then suddenly this amazing thing came into being, which was federated digital identity, which is the single sign-on. It's the ability to use your Facebook identity, your LinkedIn identity, your Twitter, maybe I shouldn't use that word, your Google identity to prove and validate who it is that you say you are. And that was great, but limited in terms of what companies could do with that data and what you could actually migrate securely into different environments that you were doing business. And now we have this world of decentralized identities, data IDs, associated with our government ID. But actually, identity is something you should own and you should control in terms of who has access to information that is relevant for you. For instance, a CV contains your identity, your work identity, your experience identity. Now, the information in your CV is something that you would give to a potential employer. But that's not necessarily something you would give to a potential mother-in-law, right? So it's about what part of our identity do we want to share? And this quote, which is Philip J. Windley, he talks about we use identity in the physical world without thinking about it. And when we do, there are patterns that are so ingrained in our ways of interacting that we don't give them a second thought. As we move more and more of our lives into the digital realm, while also protecting and preserving the agency and autonomy we need, we must create a digital world that allows us to jump the trust gap we inevitably have with people, organizations, and things when our interaction is digital. So that's a very big word that he talks about, this trust gap, and I'm going to talk about trust in a little way. So let's think about how the evolution of identity has been dealt with in the digital space, specifically in the world of AI. Because we know that the world of AI, as much power and superpower as it gives us as marketers, it also has created this uncanny valley where your digital identity can be created and where you can assume somebody else's digital identity, assume their voice, assume their movement, and actually put out stuff that isn't true in the world out there. So the question that we face is, with all the power comes huge responsibility. And this is what I was saying earlier about making sure we build responsibility into everything that we do. So who's working on this problem? All the big centralized federated identity players are, from your OpenIDs, your Microsofts, your Googles, et cetera, et cetera. There are a couple of interesting initiatives in the decentralized space, the one being Sovereign, which looks at your identity in terms of 3 layers: relationship, messaging, and your attribute exchange, which is, again, a really interesting way of saying your identity is complex and you'll use it for different people in different contexts. And then there's Vitalik Buterin, who is the founder of Ethereum, and a group of guys who've been talking about something called a soul-bound token. I think that's the thing, where it's essentially a codification of social capital. So this is how we take our reputation, our credentials, our educational credentials, and we're able to bear our souls. I think it's a little bit OTT for my own personal take, but you can essentially own that and share bits of it as you want. The jury's out whether this will work. Ethereum is a big player in the blockchain space. And then I'm sure you've all read the recent press about WorldCoin, sort of this next level solution, actually built by Sam Altman, who's the guy who really introduced AI to the world, or OpenAI. And this is these creepy, strange-looking orbs that he's now sort of sent out all over the globe to capture everybody's identity. He's got a big, hairy, audacious goal to actually scan the eyeballs of the entire human population with what he calls proof of humanhood, and he's basically rewarding you for doing that with some world coins, which is a cryptocurrency. And this initiative is to certify human identity as a protection against an AI world. It's a little bit rich coming from the guy who introduced the problem to our world in the first place. Now he's saying, I've got the antidote. Pay me. Okay, so interesting initiatives. Which one will win? The jury's still out. We don't know. We can't forget about Tim Berners-Lee. He's the guy who actually built the World Wide Web. He heads up W3C, which is defining the standards for the web of the future. And they actually last year approved a standard called Digital Identifier version 1. Very similar to Sovereign in terms of it looking at the different components of identity and data exchange. And so, who knows? We don't know yet. And I promise you, Meta, Google, they're all trying to solve this problem. The thing with Meta and Google is they already own our asses, excuse my language, but it's essentially they own a component of our identity, which is our social identity. They do not own all the other parts of our identity. But if you look at what some of what they're doing in terms of trying to enter into financial services, you look at some of the other big fangs, Amazon with commerce, they own a lot more knowledge and information about me and my behavior than Meta does or than Google does. But they own a lot of that information. So who's going to win? The jury's still out. There's a lot happening. I just want to share one quick success story, and this is a country, a nation-state success story. So what Singapore has done over the 20-odd years, they've been building a smart nation. They defined the strategy many years ago that they wanted to create a country where government would be able to harness technology, where the economy would guide businesses to leverage technology, and where society would be empowered. And they introduced all of these amazing underlying infrastructure, the rails that would help those different sectors of society to interact and digitally. They have built a society and a country they've truly digitally transformed a country, utilizing the sort of a benevolent dictatorship or a government who's willing to actually invest in the underlying rails, and they've seen massive adoption in terms of business and consumers because it just makes life so easy. So it's about providing infrastructure in order to deliver ease of use, and that works in every digital environment. I just love this quote: "We work very hard to build the trust quotient because in a digital economy, trust is everything. And the more we build a robust regulatory framework, a trusted platform, trusted infrastructure, the better we get in the space." Regulation, necessary to protect our consumers. Trusted platform, the underlying platform that runs the rails for a digital economy. The infrastructure is what it delivers. So very briefly, I want to talk about the Edelman Trust Barometer, which is really about this concept of trust. We're living in a world where trust is eroding. People are feeling anxious. There's major divides in society, and we are battling, because of AI and because of bad actors, for what is truth. We're in a post-truth world. And for the first time ever, according to Edelman, people's personal economic fears are on par with their existential fears. Fears like climate change, nuclear war, all the stuff that happens out there, they feel as concerned about their own personal situation, as concerned about as all those big societal issues as they do about their own personal situation. It's an increasingly polarized world, and if you look at the countries that are sitting at the most polarized, I don't know if I've got a thing, but the top right country, you've got Colombia, the US, South Africa. We've become, and we are looking at a very, very polarized society that we're trying to do business in and we're trying to communicate with. Interestingly, for all of us in this room, is that government is far less trusted than business. So we have more trust than government does in actually helping people take control of their lives. And again, if you look at this graph, if you look at the advantage that business has over government, South Africa is right at the top of the list. We're right at the top of the list. So what does that mean? It gives us a huge opportunity to navigate this deeply polarized and complex world in a way that we can actually make a difference in the environments that we work in. So we have to continue to lead. We need to collaborate. And Kate, thank you for that wonderful presentation. We need to collaborate with each other, and we need to collaborate with government, as the CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the country are doing. We need to restore this sense of optimism and show people a vision with the purpose-led brands that were so beautifully illustrated by Diana, to how we can, and we are an optimistic group, us South Africans, and we need to advocate for the truth. We need to tell the truth. We need to make it more transparent in the world in which we live. So digital transformation is a journey, not a destination. We need to listen and hear everything that our customers are saying. So thank you very much. Thank you. So I've given you a very high-level, fairly theoretical view of this concept of digital identity. Dawood Patel, who's the CEO of Helm, is going to join us on the stage and give us a short presentation of what are the considerations of tech innovation, specifically as they relate to AI. So please welcome Dawood up here.
Cool. Thanks, Luisa. Thanks, everybody, for having me. It's awesome discussions and learning today. Yeah, like Luisa said, I'm just going to try and talk about some of the considerations that businesses need to look to when looking to implement and innovate from a customer perspective. So very quickly, as Helm, we as an organization design human-first AI-powered experiences that look to close the gap between you and your customer. And this concept of human first, or as Bea said, the customer view that you need to take is critical in understanding how you implement technology, how you bring it into the business, and how you make sure that it actually improves lives of not just your end users and your customers, but also for the people working in the business. And AI being the catchphrase and the buzz that everybody's talking about, what I'd like to do is talk about some of the considerations that you need to look at before implementing something like AI or any other emerging tech in your business. And this on the back of many years of experience as Helm and personally in terms of some of the different things that we've been able to do with some of our clients and also with some of our customers in terms of how they've moved the needle in terms of customer experience. And ultimately, once you move that needle, you move the imperatives around profit and growth, etc. So before you sort of look to implement anything is the first two questions you need to ask yourself is, could you use this tech? Could it benefit me as a business? Will it make an impact to the customers that I'm servicing? Will it make an impact to the call center agent, to the store agent, etc.? How is it going to improve their lives in terms of servicing your customer? Because the last thing you want to do is implement something that nobody adopts, because like it was mentioned earlier, we as humans resist change. And if you don't implement it properly, it's not going to sort of move the needle for you, like I said. And the second thing is, should I do it? I think this is often a question that people forget to ask. I mean, it's often very easy, oh, this is a new cool tech, it's a new trend, and I want to make sure it's part of the business. And I think if we don't ask the hard question as, should I do this? I think we often lose value in terms of the customer experience we're trying to create. And because some of the emerging tech is largely unregulated, like Luisa mentioned, you often don't understand the implications of what these things would do. And in some organizations, like a fashion brand, it's easy to do that. The implications aren't significant. But if you look at something like fintech or the financial space, heavily regulated, any sort of implications from a tech perspective become huge in terms of the impact it has on your customers, the impact it has on your businesses, and sometimes it leads to sort of fines that people have to look at paying. So in terms of the principles, I think we all very quickly have to look at is timing is everything. I mean, when you're looking to implement new technology in a business, AI specifically, you need to understand not only is the technology ready, but am I ready as a business, and are my customers ready for this sort of change? And without having a good understanding of this timing principle, you then sort of tend to be either too far ahead, and so nobody picks it up, or you're too slow in terms of adoption and your competitors beat you. Sort of in a previous job, they call me a lapsed technologist because I used to code back in the day, long ago. And because we're all seasoned professionals, like Kate says, we used to code on Palm Pilots. I don't know if you guys remember what those things are. So there we go. Some chuckles means somebody can relate. So what we used to do was code apps on these things. And while it was a great thing, it was awesome, you're taking away the paper from the actual individual using the PDA, the challenge we had was the internet wasn't ready for it in terms of connectivity on the device. So we had this great app, awesome, The guy clicks on stuff, he feels empowered, he's got a little pocket protector with the thing on his pants. But when he needs to send that information and that data back, he had to come back to the office, put it on a cradle, and then only it connects. So the timing of that solution wasn't appropriate. It was awesome in that it took away paper, it gave the business lots of data, but the challenge they had was the data was largely delayed and therefore didn't provide the business impact it required. The second thing when looking to implement something new is develop an ecosystem, and an ecosystem not just in your business, but with like-minded individuals. And again, I'll use an example. One of my previous jobs, I was looking to implement an online gaming platform. This was around 2006, 2007. And awesome, we wanted to provide, it was a first-person shooter game, Call of Duty. Some of you may know it. And the idea behind it was, again, to improve the gaming experience. So if you're an avid gamer, latency is critical. If you don't have the great latency in terms of your network provider, somebody's going to shoot you before you can move the gun. That's it. And if you're a gamer, your points and your sort of rankings are critical. So what we tried to do in this business was, how do we reduce the latency for the end user? So we had the network, we had the servers, we had the gamers. The challenge in terms of the ecosystem was the game publishers weren't ready for us. And so therefore, you had everything to go up until that last mile, and therefore you couldn't provide the experience. So it's very important to create this ecosystem. And then within the business, if you don't have like-minded individuals that are willing to take these risks for emerging technologies, you're going to sort of be basically swimming upstream. And that's another critical thing, is not just about getting budget approval, but also sometimes regulatory approval. Are the call center agents ready to support this? Do they understand the implications of this? So creating an ecosystem in your environment is very, very critical before you implement any new technology. Sort of the next one, and I think we often forget this, is creating and cultivating a sort of a culture of failure. Things are going to go wrong. It's emerging tech. You're playing with something that we don't know answers to. I think you're playing with things that you're often plotting a path for that many will follow you through. And so therefore you are going to make mistakes. Tolerate them, but more importantly, I think it's critical to understand what you're going to do when things go wrong. And often, because of the excitement, because of the hype of the new tech, and generative AI specifically, it's largely unknown, so we don't create these sort of processes to manage failure when it does happen. And so without this, you're going to upset your clients. And once bitten, twice shy is a very, very critical customer principle. You know, you're going to lose that customer, and they're not going to come back. You're going to lose that adoption from a call center agent or an in-store agent, and they're then going to become sort of very, very, very resistant to change in the future. So create this tolerance, and this tolerance needs to be linked to essentially where you are in the curve from a different tech perspective. And it's important to understand the different risks and benefits across this sort of timeline that you're going to have. So if you're in an innovation phase, then your tolerance for failure has to be exceptionally high, because things are being learned on the fly. I mean, we all seeing it with ChatGPT. Within the first 4 months of release, the improvements it's done was phenomenal, right? It first failed the bar exam, and now it's passed it. But at the same time, it's creating challenges for academic institutes now, where some of them are realizing, you know, the students have to go back to writing exams. They have to go back to, I'm not sure how kids are going to comply with that, but you're going to have to write your exams and submit written assignments, etc. And those sort of things have to be considered when you're looking at implementing new tech in your business. I can't stress this enough. I think I mentioned it about who we are and what we do in terms of human first experiences. Knowing your customer, and the customer here is not always your end user, the one that's paying you for something. It's often, like I said, the call center agent, it's the finance department, it's the individual that's standing at the coal face in the store. Understanding the pain they go through, understanding what this technology and AI specifically will do for them and impact how they do things is a critical thing. And in our experience, one of the things we often see here is that, you know, we skip user research, etc. We skip feedback loops, and therefore you can't sort of make quick changes. The other thing that happens when you're implementing new tech, and AI specifically, is then you tend to create another system. So rather than improving existing systems, you create another one. And often, very often, what we're seeing is that the poor agent on the other end of the call is swivel chair between multiple different systems. I mean, some of the clients we've dealt with over the years, in order to answer a call on the call center, the agent has to know not only the myriad of products, but they also have to work with 15 or 16 different systems just to solve your problem. And that's as a result of innovation, which is fantastic, but its impact is often forgotten, and therefore adoption becomes a problem. And ultimately, you don't see the ROI in terms of that. Another sort of principle, very importantly, is be very quick to react. So here, you know, again, examples in our sort of history was at one of the telcos I worked for, we were responsible for putting through a digital strategy. And when I joined the business, the social media strategy, this was not very long ago, was there was no social media allowed. So whatever was happening in the ether, the business wasn't allowed to sort of react, wasn't allowed to engage, and wasn't allowed to sort of become a progressive brand. So the whole idea was to, how do we transform this business? How do we make sure that we set processes and procedures in place that takes that business from that sort of mindset to the digital world? And what we did then was created a team that essentially moved very fast and took people along the journey. Yes, we often asked for forgiveness rather than permission, but that's the only way sort of we moved forward. And what we found is that when we were able to react to things online, it changed perception not just with customers, but it also changed perceptions internally. And the last one, from a principle perspective, is a critical one. I think when you're implementing new tech, and AI is a critical example of it right now, is you are defining the future, not just for you, but often for those that follow you. And so you need to sort of think about, how do you future-proof your solutions? How do you future-proof its implementation in order to, again, move those business imperatives? I mean, as businesses, we're here to do one thing, make money, and do it in a purposeful, driven way. But those are the things that we need to move. And so when you're setting these rules, just make sure that you understand it's going to impact your future. It's going to impact the way your business moves forward. And very, very importantly, it's going to impact the way customers perceive you and look towards you for driving what they need. So very quickly, I hope I made time for you, Luisa. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Dawood. Please have a seat. And then can I call the other panelists up onto the stage, please? So Kerry, Janse van Rensburg, who's the Digital Marketing Director for the Ignition Group. Munyaradzi Nyikavaranda, who is the Executive for Data and Analytics at Multichoice Group. And Denvor Daniel, Senior Marketer on Digital for MTN. Thank you. A big round of applause for our panel. Okay, we've got a rock star panel here today. And we're going to talk about some of the issues and the items that really emerged from Dawood's wonderful presentation and a little bit of the insights from mine. So we're going to talk about how the landscape of marketing and technology has evolved and what this means for us as marketers. So I want to kick off the conversation, Kerry, with you. We know and we've heard how important data-driven marketing is. And you've spoken quite a lot about the challenges and opportunities of managing first-party data versus second and third-party data. So I'd love to get your sense of what does it take as an organization managing multiple brands as you do to keep a handle on this tsunami of data that is facing you?
So it's really not easy. I think Ignition Group has a data lake of about 33 million customers sitting in Snowflake at the moment. And the real question is, how do you monetize that data? So I think it was said earlier that with the cookieless future and and privacy policies and everything else locking down, it really is now about concentrating on your first-party data and how you monetize that. It's a scary thing to go into, especially when if you're in a business that doesn't really understand data and the actual, that it's gold right now, especially from a marketing perspective. And then the tools that you need to use to extract the value that you have sitting within that data, how you actually can use that data for an ROI, and then what technology needs to actually be used to be able for that data to be usable.
Thank you. Thank you, Kerry. I'd like, obviously I'm going to ask you the data question. So if you could sort of jump into that, also talking about what I mentioned earlier about how you can't have an AI strategy without a data strategy. And what are as somebody who's working with hundreds of millions of customers across the continent, how do you manage AI responsibly within, and what do you need from a foundational perspective? What can all of the marketers in the room think about and take back with them to at least start on day one?
I think the beauty of being in a room full of marketers is the fact that data is the lifeblood of marketing, right? So I think when you kind of start thinking about data, the first question you should be asking before you even talk about tech, processes, people, whatever, is what is the why? What is the thing that you actually are trying to do from a data perspective? And the conversation today is about, to a large degree, about master data management. So people talk about data strategies within the context of master data management, but that's not actually the case. The conversation, especially in the world of marketing, they should be shifting more towards a data activation strategy. Data activation strategy and master data management are two fundamental different concepts, which require also certain levels of deliberacy when it comes to actually implementing that. By data activation, I mean the whole life cycle of data, which is basically the collection of data, the storage, you spoke about the amounts of data in data lakes, the decisioning, which is basically where you put your business rules and your why, like what is the reason, what is the thing that you're actually trying to do. And then it comes down to the activation layer. So the activation is probably the area where most marketers operate in. And activation and commercialization of data can come in different forms, right? So one of them is maybe marketing to drive down efficiencies or to drive efficiencies from a marketing perspective. Experience for better service, we've heard about personalization, or the one that everybody in this room would be familiar with, which is driving omni-channel engagement across the board. So the thinking around data should be the entire life cycle of the data as it goes through from the collection element into the commercialization. And maybe just to add to what you spoke about around the first-party data play, I think it's increasingly important, and I think Luisa touched on it in the previous, when you start thinking about data and AI, to also be very deliberate about defining an ID strategy for your organization. Because historically in a lot of organizations, there's been silos, right? And when you think about a data activation strategies, everything I've said now, it transitions from every part of the organization, from IT to marketing. So how do you then harmonize all these IDs so that you can activate experiences across different spaces? So I think one of the key considerations is be deliberate about your data strategy. And then the second one is just be deliberate about your ID strategy so that you can then activate your data.
Thanks, Munya. So, Denvor, I'm going to pop to you I'm going to come back to data, but the very, very important consideration. We spoke about being a responsible marketer and being clearly, working within a regulatory framework where it comes to data. Now, we all know about PAPIA and the impact it has on our businesses and what we've had to do to get ready for it. Well, as we also know, Dis-Chem has just become the first test case around, the customer's right to be forgotten. And it's very interesting, we're all watching with big eyes, but from your perspective, you as a telco, you aggregate so much data, and you have so much data about it. What do you think, how can marketers sort of balance the need for for data-driven insights with this imperative to comply with regulation and remain responsible?
I think it's on now.
Yes, you are.
Great. Great question. Thank you so much. I think just to tie back to what Kerry as well as Munya mentioned, I think it's about getting the fundamentals right. It's when you start collecting data, it's around making sure that when you do those collections, I mean, I was chatting to one of our technology guys the other day, and he mentioned something along the lines of there are 300 different systems inputting data into MTN's data lake, and it registers 28 billion transactions a day. So it's a significant number in terms of just the amount of data that comes in. And with that is obviously the opportunity to actually gain those rich insights. Balancing that against the responsibility to be not only responsible in terms of responsible to the data subject, but also to the data owner. That's critical, absolutely critical. So from an MTN perspective, for us, a lot of work has actually gone into creating that kind of single source of truth for the customer. So creating that digital identity where we do a lot of work around making sure that we actually positively and proactively engage with customers that have opted in to receive communication of any kind from the brand. And also making sure that we can manage that opt-out process very effectively, and also make sure that we can actually check at any given point, giving the customer the express right to actually be opted in or opted out and actually forgotten, to your point. And again, that's I think the technical side, getting the foundation right. Then there's the kind of organizational side of work that needs to happen. So it's working very, very closely with regulatory teams and compliance, checking things, to Dawood's point, the customer journey. When you interact with a customer on any touch point, whether it be a physical touch point, customer walks into a store, whether it be a digital touch point, customer going onto an app, the customer actually engaging on any of your social platforms, they have the ability to actually say, I want to be included in the conversation, or I want to be forgotten. And that's a lot of foundational work that is currently still underway with what we're doing at MTN, but ideally that's where we would love to get to.
Wonderful, thank you. So Dawood, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit more about, because AI clearly is an area that you have deep expertise in. Talk about how powerful, what AI can lend to creativity. Because we've always said that marketing sits at the intersection of science and art. And I know that there's some really interesting examples of how marketing is using the data that is emerging from AI to actually really become exceptional storytellers and really make the customer journey more efficient, more effective, and deliver a better return.
Cool. Thanks, Luisa. So I think I can talk through that through a potential example of an experience that one should look to create, and I'm going to use Denvor and Munya as examples because of the businesses they represent. I think a dangerous thing to do with the data that you're collecting is using that to cold call somebody to sell them something. That's wrong. But where the data and AI can make a difference is somebody watching Showmax on Munya's platform, using their mobile data connection on the MTN network, and understanding that I'm going to run out of data pretty soon. And therefore, within the Showmax experience, instead of popping me an ad, pop me up a thing that says, recharge my data. How do I buy another bundle? I think those experiences that leverage AI, leverage data, are the ones that we as a marketing sort of cohort need to start looking towards, rather than just a cold call or a cold sale. And you can use that across different industries, but I think, that's the sort of responsibility that we have to take to improve customer experience. Yes, we're going to make money out of it because you're going to sell the data bundle and you're going to have content that's going to be viewed. But at the same time, I'm not breaking that user's customer experience. And I think if we have that top of mind, then the ability to implement data strategies and sort of leverage the power of AI becomes far more powerful.
Thank you for that. I mean, it's quite fascinating that you talk about two different brands collaborating leveraging, AI in a secure way where personally identifiable information is not available. But collaboration, as we learned from Kate, is hard. So if we find it hard to just collaborate within our organizations, how do we collaborate with multiple brands within an umbrella business like yours, Kerry? How do you work to leverage the scale, the size, and the reach of all the brands in your business in an effective way?
So really it's about, the technology that you implement within the business. So digital transformation is a journey, and Ignition is still going on that journey. Really, first of all, the buy-in from top down, getting people on board, getting the resistance to change out the window. And it really is about making it exciting to be able to use the technology that is out there, which is so sophisticated today, to achieve all the business objectives and goals that we need to do. So with all our different businesses within the company, and also just acquiring Gumtree, which has millions of users, it's the now what? We've got all these different customers that don't necessarily connect, but how do we connect them? And that's the strategy and the meaningful strategy that we need to sit down and really think about. It's easy enough to go, here's a segment and a sales force and a whatever it is. But if it's not used and it's not used correctly, then it just sits there and it's a big black hole in the CFO's pocket, right?
Absolutely. And on that theme, Munya, you've spoken a lot about how, we know technology stacks are becoming more and more complex, and there's just so much more of them. We've got to deal with more data. How do you get your team, what kind of skills do you need in your team, but how do you get your team to use the technology effectively enough that you can get the benefit out of it?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. Thanks, Luisa, for the segue. I think the key is orienting around the why, right? I probably sound like Simon Sinek right now, but that's not the intention. You kind of need to orient yourself around what is the bigger purpose of why you're actually doing what you're doing. Forget the technology, forget the processes, forget the complexity of how you get there. Just orient around the why. So from a Multichoice perspective, when we went on this technology journey, like the MarTech pieces, which I also look after, is we were very deliberate around what our one-liner was. Our one-liner was personalization at scale. That's what it was. So personalization means you need to be able to understand every single touch point that your user is going on, and then map that to some sort of business outcome or business theme, right? So that was the process. So we just needed to understand what is the context, and personalization is relative to what the user is actually looking for and the stage that they're in. So that was the sort of the why, right? And then we went on a journey to have partnerships, as you spoke about collaboration with some big players in the industry. Microsoft is one of them. We also went on a marketing automation sort of program across the group. Been chatting to a few peers within the industry as well to just share some insights. But then once you kind of define the why and you've got the right mandate behind you and the right sort of organizational support, it's fairly easy to sort of align and get people to use the tech, right? Because you kind of move into the conversation around driving operational efficiencies and those types of things. So KPIs, shared KPIs from an exco level down to like an operational level. So you kind of, in a way, force people to do it, but then you kind of incentivize them for doing what they need to do. So when you then do that and you have those clear KPIs, you have clear sort of mandate and objectives that you're actually trying to drive at an organizational level, it's fairly easy to then cascade that into an operational level. And one of the key things that is more on the human side that you can then leverage is creating tactical proof points. So as you implement your technology, don't go big bang. Start small and sort of grow almost organically. Because when you then show the small, quick wins, and then the team get excited, the departments get excited, and then you can kind of almost like become evangelists. And then that way you kind of grow it organically. Just to close off, one example is when we went on our marketing automation journey, is we basically have, has anyone been called by a Multichoice call center? How many people absolutely love those calls? Yeah, nobody, right? So, so one of the things is we're sitting with a lot of data of people that say, don't call me, right? They've consented into marketing, but they say, please just don't call me. I'm tired of hearing about you trying to sell me a package or whatever, right? But then what we then did with the use of technology is then we took this do not contact me list, the ones that had consented to marketing, and what we then did is we pumped it into our marketing automation platform, and we're able to target these people with messaging that was deliberate. So we knew they probably watch certain shows, or they like certain programs, and we targeted them with the content. So we almost like laid a content first approach. So we spoke to, we're not selling anything, but we knew who you were. And we actually saw that we're able to convert it about a 25% of the people that say, do not contact me, because we're kind of speaking to something more than just a product push. So that is one creative way and one use case that was able to garner a lot of excitement within the organization, because this was just data we're not utilizing effectively.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I think yesterday Vince mentioned that there's a trend for businesses to start using paid media for CVM. So we're becoming, less certain of our owned data, and actually because we have such insight into people across multiple channels, we're able to target and enrich and enhance our data. So I want to talk to you, Denvor, as like the owner of the most important channel in all of our lives, our brains. So if you could talk a little bit towards our digital brains, the ones that we will never leave home without, the ones that, the minute we walk away from it, we feel a loss, a personal loss. So talk to us about mobile and how this emerging tech is impacting mobile from a marketing perspective. What are you finding amongst the brands that do business with you, but also what are you finding around consumer behavior with mobile? You can both answer if you want.
That's quite a lot of pressure, Luisa. Thanks.
I know.
But yeah, look, I think mobile, without any doubt, the numbers speak for themselves. South Africa, Africa is actually mobile first, and we're actually seeing this in the SA market, but when we engage at a group level, the exact same kind of trends come through. Mobile multi-devicing is really something that's quite important. But I think one of the most interesting things that we've seen of late is the pervasive nature of how mobile is kind of enabling people. I think if you're looking at things from, financing, micro-lending, something that's quite interesting at MTN is we using, coming back to kind of the digital identity, doing the work around that, to actually create a use case for kind of credit vetting people based on their telco data. Because people are not traditionally, they're mostly unbanked, but then traditionally they're not part of the economic kind of ecosystem to build up a credit record. So now you're creating deep insights with the fact that people are first mobile first, but also your entire life, to your point, is on your mobile device. And so that creates an opportunity for incredible kind of cross-platform collaboration. So things like, to your point, having a really interesting conversation with the likes of Showmax, as an example, to Dawood's example. Having engagements with banks in terms of creating the credit scoring for customers that may not be traditionally be able to actually get a loan or even access to finance for a car, as an example. Doesn't mean they can't, but you could actually potentially use that insights to gain some insights from that customer side. Yeah, that's from my side, Dawood.
I think to add to what Denvor said, I think what we're seeing in some of the data we've been exposed to is that, from a mobile channel perspective, not only is it like a lifeline, but when you look at some of the research we've done, is that mobile as a sort of is being used as the sort of definitive in terms of I'm making a choice between whether I'm going to walk 3Ks or buy airtime. And I think that's a critical thing in terms of the decisions some people are having to make because of their sort of attachment, and the mobile device and the mobile channel becoming so important to them. And then when you take that to the next level is how do you interact with them on mobile from a marketing perspective is what are the channels that they sort of exposed to and the apps that they're exposed to in terms of that. And what we're seeing again from the data is conversational platforms becoming more and more prevalent, right? So again, if you understand, and I'm going to talk to the LSM, say 3 to 7, not only is airtime and my spend on airtime a very important decision-making factor, but the device that I have is often not a very smartphone, therefore I don't have a lot of space on it, and so as brands, if we want to push an app to them, that's not going to happen. And that's not going to happen not because they can't afford just the download, is that phone doesn't have enough space, right? So I think it's important to understand sort of these dynamics with the market you're targeting in order to meet them there, to sort of make sure you meet them where they are rather than trying to force them onto your sort of platforms that you have.
Thanks. So another segue from that, because that really is very interesting in terms of access, is how much access and to what. Is we've spent quite a lot of time and focus over the last year with the MMA talking about the metaverse and augmented reality, virtual reality channels to market. How are those performing right now in terms of customers? I'm putting it out, I'm not sure who in the panel is willing, ready, and able to answer this question, but I mean, the whole concept of creating an exceptional experience within an environment where we truly know our customers and can deliver that experience to them virtually to be a replica of either the digital or the offline experience. How are we, what kind of technology are we able to use as marketers, and how has it matured over time, and what are some of the examples of how you're using those in your businesses? No? Kerry? No? Dawood?
Let me try that one. Okay, cool.
Find somebody.
So I think to your first question, Luisa, about augmented reality, virtual reality, I think in our market, in South Africa in particular, I think it's still early days. There's a very small segment of the market that have access to the enabling factors that allow you to have those immersive experiences, right? So the goggles that you need, etc., the bandwidth that you'd require. So I think from that perspective, it's still early days. I think, again, if you take a human lens onto it and the customer-first sort of a view onto things, you'd be surprised to see how some of the most simple access technologies that people have are the most robust in terms of moving forward, in terms of filling the void. I mean, we often forget things like USSD. It's such a critical thing for a large part of the market in South Africa and the rest of Africa because it removes lots of the friction that you have in terms of data access, cost, etc. So the innovation using simpler technologies where we're seeing lots of the experiences being provided. So with one of our customers fixing their USSD experience, not only improved customer sort of journeys for them, but also moved the needle in terms of data sales, right? Very, very simple thing. In another experience with another customer, they're using WhatsApp as their primary channel for customer service. We're seeing CSATs go through the roof because we've spent quite a bit of time making sure that a simple thing like how do I identify you as a user is not a cumbersome thing. I'm not asking you for blood samples, etc. I'm just asking you for a little bit of information to make sure that I identify you as a customer, and then thereafter I enable you. I think a key philosophy in terms of some things we do is like when you're looking at the customer journey is know me, so know who I am as your customer. Show me you know me by not sending me bulk SMSs. You're sending me something personalized, like Munya says, knowing what content I do. Once you've shown it to me, how do you enable me? So what's the right access channel? What's the right self-service menus? So that's the third thing. And then the last thing customers are looking for is value me. So I've enabled you, now value me. Give me some benefits, rewards, etc. And that's how you close the loop in terms of the customer. But the simplicity of the channel is where we're seeing the experience moving forward rather than the fancy stuff, if I may call it that.
Fair enough. So thank you. Did you want to say something, Munya? No?
Not really, but
Okay. So therefore, I'm going to ask the audience if you have any questions that you want to ask any of us up here on stage. Anyone in the audience? Paul has a mic back there. Any burning questions? Yes, no, maybe. Okay, then I have one. Okay, last question to the panel. So we've got access to all these incredible tools. We've got access to the sea of data, which we're getting better at understanding, getting a handle on understanding business, purpose for capturing it, and complying with the regulatory stuff. But essentially, as marketers, what do we want to do? We want to identify prospective customers for our business. We want to be able to put the right offer in front of the right person at the right time, right? Nothing changes. That's still what we want to do. We want to be able to personalize the offer because we know that delivers a better ROI than just a generic offer. So what types of technologies, assuming we're starting at zero base, what types of technologies should we as marketers be looking at implementing today? And I'm going to ask all of you that question because you'll all have a slightly different perspective. And I'm going to start with Munya on the data side.
So thanks for that question, Luisa. I think it comes down to sort of my opening statement around the sort of the why, as well as looking at data from a data activation strategy as opposed to a data storage strategy. Fundamentally different. So that shift basically determines what type of technology you then invest into, right? So if you're pretty much in the early stages where you're still defining how to actually collect your data, catalog it, like tag it correctly, then you need to look at a different technology stack, the data orchestration. For instance, in the world of digital, you have like things like Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, those type of tools that allow you to understand and collect data, right? When you mature a bit more and you kind of understand your data, like from a marketing perspective, you then move and look at technologies that allow you to store this data, that then integrate into your orchestration sort of pieces of technology. Once you kind of move from there, you then look at consent management, because obviously regulatory and those types of things, something that allows you to almost roll out a framework, a consent framework across multiple geographies if you're an organization that exists in multiple spaces. And then you move into the decisioning technology. So basically things like CDPs, DMPs that allow you to activate this data, because then you're moving into a decisioning piece. Then once you mature from that point, you then start looking at automation tools that allow you to personalize it, to say right message in front of the right person at the right time. You start looking at automation tools, things like Salesforce, Zoho, a bunch of other tools that allow you to automate your marketing operations so that you can be more efficient, and then look back like tools that allow you to then report and see how you're doing. So as you can see, it's the entire value chain, and it's very, very relative to where you are in the organization, in your process as an organization from a maturity perspective. So the why then defines everything, because why are you doing it? So then you kind of loop it back as well to the why and map it to the organization.
I don't know about you, but I'm just exhausted just listening to that process. So I'm going to change it up for you a bit, Kerry, because it's daunting, right? It's daunting, and we all need to go on this journey. So, Kerry, my question to you is, what skills do you need in your marketing organization? In other words, who are the people who are going to deliver on this Rolls Royce that Munya has described?
Rolls Royce, I want it.
Yeah.
Send it over.
100%.
So from a skills perspective, you need someone that actually really understands operationally and the business completely, not just marketing. It doesn't just sit within the marketing space, right? Yes, the marketers execute the campaigns, they come up with the ideas, they come up with the content for personalization, et cetera, but it's the whole value chain of the business to actually get it right from start to finish. So it really is, as Munya was saying, it sounds like a lot from a technology point of view to add in, from start to finish, customer data platforms, MarTech tools, this, that, and other. You need to make sure as a person and as a resource that you are making the right decisions and that they actually work all together seamlessly. If they don't work seamlessly and you're working in silos, IT is implementing one tech stack, marketing is implementing a CDP. Then at the end of it, the call center is implementing another thing. Then they're like, oh, okay, let's all just plug it in together. They're all open APIs, just plug it all together, and you get one big, right? So from a resource perspective, it's from the very top operations, sales, marketing, all the way down to the people that are implementing the campaigns. But you really do need to have someone that understands digital transformation, the how, and the why.
Thank you for adding that. And Dawood, my question to you, to wrap this up, is what is the role of the agency, of the third-party partner, to help brands along this technology journey, or to face all of these challenges of what to decide, when to do what, and what to use?
Thanks, Luisa. I think the critical thing is to play the honest broker, and the honest broker between the needs of the end user, the person on the other end of the screen or the phone, and the needs of the business. So what I'm trying to deliver in terms of business value, profitability, reduced call handling time, etc. And I think as partners, we need to be those honest brokers to basically represent and find the balance between both parties, because they're often conflicting requirements. But I think if you're the trusted partner, you're able to sort of find the middle part to say, I can help you drive business value on the one side by allowing you and enabling you as a customer to do A, B, and C. I think if we try to just implement tech for the sake of it, we're not going to go far. It's going to be a short-term gain, and at the end of the day, nobody's going to win that battle. But if you play that honest broker role, I think agencies and partners have a really critical role to play, because unfortunately, having been on the customer side, we have a very myopic view. Our view is either driven by the KPIs that are sort of given to us and handed to us, or we're driven by he said so kind of thing, or she said so. So I think that honest broker role is the critical one.
Thank you. And to end with you, Denvor, just to talk about the role of the channel in all of this, because you own the distribution channel to the customer. So this entire chain is reliant on your channel operating and delivering the message to the right customer at the right time and place. How can you play a more effective role in helping marketers, agencies deliver on their objective?
Well, absolutely. I think the opportunity from a channel perspective is actually quite significant, in the sense that there's opportunities for the channel to create some really interesting and smart partnerships. So just one example is in the gaming space, where there is a lot of work being done in terms of 5G gaming, and it's literally seamless gaming. So there's no login. You literally open your device and you start gaming. There's no app you need to download. It is literally as easy as that. And it's about looking at from a customer perspective, taking the customer view. How do you make it as seamless and as easy for a customer to engage with any particular channel? And then once you have that, I think, waxed, then all of the beautiful insights that, all three of my esteemed colleagues have said. So all the way from kind of building the house, getting the foundation right, getting the right kind of people to drive the Rolls Royce, and then, getting the insights that Dawood has mentioned, and then packaging that and making the magic, and then just delivering it out to the customer. The customer, at the end of the day, in my mind, is the person that, or the person that should make the decision of how do I interact, what is my experience, what experience do I expect and anticipate. If the information, the offer, the ad, or whatever it is, their interaction actually resonates with that particular customer, one of two things are going to happen. They're going to talk about it in a positive way and tell all their friends. And the second thing, which is I think what every single brand here wants, is you want to create stickiness. You want to create that opportunity for the customer to come back. I'm coming back because it's easy. I love it. And I think what MTN or any telco has the ability to do is to kind of play that more pivotal role in the middle. You become the hyperscaler. You become the enabler. You become the one that says, well, if you're looking for an opportunity to engage with a customer from a video perspective, we'll assist. To your point, we'll build a data connection or make it zero-rated for the customer to have a pleasant experience. If you want to engage with any kind of interaction on an event, there's something that the telco can facilitate in that perspective, from that perspective as well. So I think the opportunity from a channel perspective, specifically with my MTN hat on, my yellow hat, I think there's a great opportunity to actually scale up and offer marketers the ability to actually engage with customers in a very new way, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much to all of you for a fascinating discussion, and thank you, everybody.